Ellie Carter is Faith Lehane. Faith Lehane is Ellie Carter. Samantha Carter of the SGC has just discovered the daughter she thought had died so long ago has been treated horribly by the people who had raised her, and now she needs to go to Sunnydale to find out more about Faith and why she was there in the first place. Faith wakes up at the SGC soon after Carter leaves, and the Slayer is not enthusiastic about her circumstances. Welcome to TH Stories 80, where stories come to life from iconic fandoms to eerie tales of ghosts, legends, and the supernatural. There's always a new world to explore. Now we begin Chapter 4 of Born into Darkness. Let's dive in. Sunnydale Mercy Hospital. Few days earlier, 0600 hours. Giles was fast asleep in his apartment. The events following the Ascension had been fast and brutal. There was the death of Mayor Wilkins, the destruction of Sunnydale High, and the exhaustion that came from watching over Faith while she lay unconscious. Now unemployed, Giles still had enough money in his various accounts to last for years. "I'll enjoy being a gentleman of leisure in the meantime," he had told Willow a few days after the school's destruction. Joyce had returned a few days later from wherever Buffy had sent her to keep her safe during the Ascension. Given that the mayor had murdered multiple parents during the botched graduation ceremony, Giles agreed Buffy had done the right thing. However, there was one matter he didn't agree with: what happened to Faith. He had told the blonde Slayer exactly how he felt about her decision to use Faith to save Angel, the same Angel who had left for Los Angeles soon after. The Watcher would bring fresh lilies for the injured and unconscious Faith. Buffy, on the other hand, would leave newspapers, reminding Faith that her benefactor, the one she had sworn allegiance to, was dead and gone, that he had failed to destroy Sunnydale, that Faith, like him, was a failure. One day, Giles noticed a small piece of paper stuffed between the pages of a newspaper Buffy had left. Before he could slip it out, it fell to the ground. After reading the note, a threat warning Faith to leave Sunnydale if and when she woke, Giles shook his head and threw it away. He then left a card among the lilies, detailing what had been happening in Sunnydale. He still hoped that, eventually, the two Slayers could work together. However, especially since, with Faith's temporary death, the council would have activated a new Slayer. Giles suspected the new girl would be sent to Sunnydale sooner or later. In the meantime, he wanted to help Faith confront everything that had happened, from the council's special operations team to the incident with Buffy and Angel, and whatever else the future held. He was certain the council wasn't finished with her yet. But all of that changed with a phone call at 7 in the morning. "What?" a groggy Giles mumbled as he brought the receiver to his ear. A few seconds later, he sat up with a start, eyes wide. Nearly tripping over himself as he got out of bed, he said, "How? When? Is she hurt?" "All right, I'm on my way." A day after the school exploded, Giles had listed himself as Faith's emergency contact. Now, the police were calling to inform him that Faith had left the hospital sometime during 4 and 6 that morning. According to surveillance footage, she had mugged a young woman and stolen both her belongings and her car. Giles would later learn that Faith had also withdrawn $1,000 from the victim's bank account before destroying the card. Faith, Giles thought as he rushed out of his apartment. "Damn it, you should have stayed. I could have helped you, but now the police will be coming after you, and there's nothing I can do." It took Giles 10 minutes to reach the hospital. By then, 3 police cars were already parked outside. Glancing at the empty vehicles, Giles entered the lobby and quickly took the elevator up to the floor where Faith's room was located. At the nurse's station, He saw 4 uniformed officers and 2 men in suits, one with a full head of dark brown hair, the other bald. Approaching them, Giles introduced himself as Faith's emergency contact. 10 minutes later, after a conversation with the detectives, Giles learned the full story. They questioned him and speculated that Faith must have been on PCP, considering she had managed to break the restraints binding her to the bed. They also told him about the young woman who had been punched, mugged, and robbed. 10 minutes later, after a conversation with the detectives, Giles learned the full story. They questioned him and speculated that Faith must have been on PCP, considering she had managed to break the restraints binding her to the bed. They also told him about the young woman who had been punched and robbed. A warrant for Faith's arrest would soon be issued. There was nothing Giles could do now except hope the police wouldn't find her. He figured Faith had 2 options: come after Buffy or leave the city. He sincerely hoped it was the latter. As he walked back toward the elevator, head downcast, he passed the nurse's station and overheard a nurse on the phone. She was saying that the mugging victim didn't feel the need to remain in the hospital since she wasn't badly hurt. Upon hearing the room number, Giles paused, ensured the detectives were still occupied, and quietly slipped away. He knocked gently and then pushed open the door. "Hello," Giles called. A young blonde woman looked up at him and gave a tight smile. Hi. "I'm sorry," said Giles, "but I couldn't help overhearing. You were the one mugged by the young woman?" She nodded. Yes. My name is Giles, Rupert Giles, and you are Tara Maclay. "Okay, Tara," Giles said, offering a small smile as he stood just inside the doorway. "Do you mind if I come in?" No. Tara shook her head and Giles stepped inside. "How can I help you?" she asked softly. "The girl who stole from you," Giles explained, hands at his sides as he approached her bed. "She's my charge. I just wanted to apologize." She said she was sorry," Tara replied, her eyes on him. "She didn't seem angry. She said she needed to leave." "I see," said Giles. "I heard the detectives mention that she took your clothes." Yes, Tara replied, glancing down at the bed. And my car." "I see," Giles repeated, rubbing his forehead in frustration. "Did she take anything else?" "Some money?" Tara said nervously. I had 500 on me, and I mean, it's alright, I have more. My mom opened an account for me and yeah." Giles then mentioned that the police had told him about the additional $1,000 taken from her account. Tara nodded. "She's my responsibility," Giles said with a heavy sigh. Tara looked up at him. "I'll return the money she stole from you, and I'll take care of any other consequences." "Thank you," Tara said, giving him a gentle smile. "Do you live around here?" Giles asked. "Stevenson Hall, on the UC Sunnydale campus," Tara replied. I was just coming in for a part-time job when, well, I understand," Giles said, nodding. Just then, a nurse entered the room and, surprised to find Giles there, reminded him that visiting hours hadn't started yet. He nodded and began to leave, handing Tara his phone number. "Please call me later today so we can meet," he said. Tara promised she would. She watched as Giles walked away while the nurse informed her she could leave soon. Tara thanked her quietly. Major Carter's lab, now. It had been nearly an hour and a half since the briefing ended. Carter was in her lab just staring at her phone. She was supposed to call the Boston Police Department and inquire about Faith. Ellie, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. The report on what the Lehane family had done made her afraid to find out what else might have happened to the young woman during her time in Boston. The truth was, Carter wanted Faith to stay at the SGC. She absolutely belonged by Faith's side. Earlier, however, Dr. Fraiser had pulled her aside and told her that Faith was still unconscious. She promised to inform Carter the moment Faith woke up. In the meantime, she reminded Carter that her job was to find out what Faith had been doing in Sunnydale. You have a job to do, Sam," Dr. Fraiser had said gently during the conversation in her closed office about 10 minutes after the briefing. Sitting across from the Major and holding her hand, she added, "I have no doubt the second test will prove she's Ellie, but until then, you need to learn everything you can about Faith. If you're not comfortable doing it alone, ask Colonel O'Neill, or I can go with you. You're not alone in this, Sam." Now, that voice echoed in her mind. Her hand hovered over the phone receiver. "I'm not alone," Carter reminded herself just as she touched the phone, then stopped at the sound of movement. Looking up, she nearly jumped. Colonel O'Neill, Daniel, and Teal'c were standing at the entrance to her lab. "Carter?" the colonel asked, concern in his voice. The blonde officer wiped her eyes and nodded, inviting them in. Normally, they would have just walked in, but everything felt different now. The situation had shifted. She could tell they were trying to give her space, but also wanted to help however they could. "You called Boston PD?" O'Neill asked. No, sir," Carter replied, shaking her head. Daniel stepped forward and handed her a few sheets of paper. Confused, she looked them over, then glanced up and smiled. He explained that he'd printed everything he could find on Sunnydale, including motel listings. "Thanks, Daniel," she said, her voice soft. In response, he gave her a tight, silent hug before stepping back. All three of them carried heavy losses. The colonel had lost his son, Daniel had lost his wife, and the child he'd promised to protect. Teal'c's son was living far away with his mother, kept safe from vengeful Jaffa. "Carter," O'Neill said, "a room's already booked for you at the Sunnydale Western. All you've got to do is check in, and you don't need to call Boston PD. I'll reach out to a friend at the FBI and ask for everything they have on the Lehane family and Faith. She'll forward the information to us. In the meantime, I'll notify Boston PD that we found Faith trying to break into the base." "You don't have to do that, sir," Carter said softly. "We're a team, Carter," he replied with a shrug. "We help each other through the best and the worst times. Major Carter," Teal'c added solemnly, "we will watch over Ellie Carter, Faith Lehane, in your absence." "Thanks, Teal'c," Carter said, offering a small smile. "Thanks, all of you." "No sweat, Carter," O'Neill replied, gently nudging the others toward the door. Teal'c inclined his head respectfully as he left, and Daniel gave her a wave. O'Neill lingered at the doorway. He looked back at her, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Find out what you can about your daughter," he said. "Thank you, sir," Carter replied with a nod. Isolation Room 1, SGC 1710 hours. Faith was covered in darkness when she heard a noise in the distance. Someone pounding a fist against the door. Cautiously, she walked toward the sound. A familiar female voice rang out, venomous and full of hate. "Damn it, Faith," the voice screamed. It was Sabrina, her mother. Faith dropped to her knees, clutching her ears. She didn't want to hear that voice. Too many terrible memories were tied to it. "You stupid girl, come out here now." "Mommy," whimpered a younger voice, trembling with fear. Faith's eyes snapped open. That was her voice, her younger self. Then came the sound of a slap. sharp and violent. Though she hadn't been physically hit, she felt the sting on her left cheek. She bowed her head, squeezing her eyes shut as the screaming continued, followed by another crash, another slap, and a shriek of pain. "That rat left because of you," Sabrina shouted. "You!" "No," Faith growled, pressing her hands tighter over her ears. "No, you drunk bitch, it was you. He left because of you, and because he was a con artist. A murdering bastard, it wasn't me. They wanted you, you little piece of scum," Sabrina hissed. Faith screamed to drown out her younger self's crying. "So you know what? You're next," her mother spat. "You want to be the breadwinner? Then you're next. You want to stay in this house? Then you're next. They'll have you and you'll like it. Be the piece of crap I've always known you are. The piece of crap you've been since we got you." Faith flinched as another crash echoed around her, followed by more screams from her younger self. Then silence. Through closed eyelids, Faith saw a faint glow. Slowly, she opened her eyes. She was kneeling in a room. "This is the room Wilkins got for me," she whispered, standing up with trembling hands, her body shaking with the weight of her memories. As she looked around, two blurry figures passed by, like a scene from a film, herself and Buffy, fighting violently. That night. The night after she shot Angel with an arrow. "She tried to kill me," Faith murmured. "She really did. And I tried to kill her. Are we destined to fight forever? Two slayers in the world. Is that why we've always been so screwed up with each other?" The room shifted. Now she stood inside Angel's mansion, the place where the Council's special ops team tried to take her. The place Wesley betrayed her. Suddenly, Faith was on the ground, eyes wide in panic. She felt Angel's fangs in her neck. Pain surged through her as her life drained away. Somewhere far away, a voice shouted her name. "Huh," Faith muttered, gasping through the pain. "Giles helping me. Well, you could have done more, Scone boy. But your princess came first." She saw a shimmer. Her vision dimmed, life slipping away. "Is that the light at the end of the tunnel?" she wondered, Angel's hand tightening around her waist, the other pulling her head for better access. Then she saw something. Someone. A girl in a red striped dress holding a red line in a tunnel. She looked just like Faith. The girl had her hand over her mouth in shock, tears running down her cheeks. And then, darkness again. Moments later, Faith felt something soft beneath her. A beeping sound echoed nearby. Distant voices followed. "She's regaining consciousness," a female voice said. Faith opened her eyes slowly. A red-haired woman with a clipboard was looking down at her. Her vision was groggy and blurred, but she saw the woman glance at the machines before turning to someone standing to Faith's right. "Hey there," the woman said gently. "Can you hear me?" 5 by 5, Faith whispered hoarsely. She turned her head and scanned the room. It was large, filled with medical equipment. A nurse worked at a computer on the other side, and two men with rifles stood at the only entrance. She turned back to the red-haired woman. "This didn't look like a police station. Maybe a prison? No. Could this be the council? Or was it those people who helped her at the alley? The restaurant manager said they were with the Air Force, so was this a military hospital?" "Do you know your name?" the woman asked. "Anne Renning," Faith replied softly, staring up at the fluorescent lights. "Well," said the woman, smiling kindly, "I'm Dr. Janet Fraiser. And yours is?" "Anne Renning," Faith repeated. "So, not Faith Lehane?" Dr. Fraiser asked, raising an eyebrow. Faith looked at her in surprise. She tried to sit up but grunted in pain. Dr. Fraiser gently helped her lie back down. Easy, Faith. You really don't want to tear the stitching. The good news is your wounds are healing at an accelerated rate. But until we're sure you'll be staying here, there are questions about your recovery, and this wasn't the council. They wouldn't be surprised by her healing. So where was she? Experimentation? Faith asked softly, panting from the pain in her side. You gonna cut me open? 'Cause I'd rather... No one's cutting you open, Dr. Fraiser interrupted gently, placing a hand on Faith's shoulder. You're safe. Dr. Fraiser, came a male voice from the doorway. General Hammond walked in, accompanied by the remaining members of SG-1. Faith recognized them from the restaurant. The blonde woman wasn't with them. So this was a military hospital. A part of her was scared, but for now, maybe she was safe, at least from the council. General, sir. Dr. Fraiser greeted him. She then turned back to Faith. Our guest's awake. Miss Lehane, said the general, stepping forward. I'm General George Hammond, commander of this base. We have a few questions, if you're up to it. General, Dr. Fraiser said. She's still recovering. I recommend asking just a few questions, and I would like her to eat first and regain some strength. Dr. Fraiser looked at Faith again. Do you feel up to answering a few questions? What the hell? Faith muttered as Fraiser raised the back of her bed so she could see clearly. Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Jackson. I know, Faith cut in. The team exchanged confused glances. The manager told me who you were, she said. Where's the blonde chick? Major Carter's on assignment, the general answered. In the meantime, we need to confirm your identity. First, your ID says you're Faith Lehane. Is that correct? Yeah, Faith replied, her gaze drifting across each person. Her eyes stopped at the one the manager had identified as Murray. He was stoic, hands behind his back. She felt a strange sensation. What are you? She wondered. Why do I feel this way around you? She looked at the others, debating whether to say anything. Do they know about Slayers? If they do, B and I might be in danger. While the FBI was running a background check, said Colonel O'Neill, they came across a warrant out of Sunnydale. Charges, murder, and assault. Of course they did. Story of my life, Faith muttered, glancing at the blanket and then back at O'Neill. Doesn't matter what I say. You'll have me picked up by the cops or... She didn't say the rest. Being handed to the council. But it hung in the air. Young lady, General Hammond interjected firmly. I would like to stop talking now, Faith sighed. Should she run again? She ran from Kakistos. Now maybe the council. If she healed, they might ship her off to jail, or worse, the council could spring her and take her back to England. The thought drained her. Who were those guys chasing you? O'Neill asked, trying to cut the tension. You're not going to be harmed. In fact, do you like cake? Huh? Faith blinked, confused. The mess hall's got chocolate cake with dark chocolate buttercream frosting, O'Neill offered with a small grin. Kinda a weekly special. Colonel, General Hammond sighed. Sir, O'Neill said, we need to show we're friendly, and what better way to do that than cake? I mean, it's cake. Faith, Dr. Fraiser said gently, let's continue this tomorrow after you've eaten and rested. I'll have dinner brought in and cake. Sir, O'Neill whispered, leaning toward the general. Tomorrow's that Toulon meeting. Right, Hammond muttered, remembering the diplomatic session. He looked back at Dr. Fraiser and Faith. A full debrief will have to wait until tomorrow afternoon. For now, you'll stay on base until we've sorted out this murder charge, the assault, and who's after you. It's for your safety and ours. We'll talk more when Carter's back, O'Neill added, even if, Hammond nodded, understanding. O'Neill's retirement had to look convincing if he was going to infiltrate the rogue NID faction. But for now, that was tomorrow's concern. Sunnydale Motor Lodge, Sunnydale 2040 hours. It had been 30 minutes since Major Carter arrived at the Sunnydale Army Base from Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. The blonde officer slung her to-go bag over one shoulder and stepped off the plane, carrying a medium-sized bag in her other hand. She nodded at the soldiers waiting for her near one of the hangars before approaching an awaiting car. She placed her bags, one containing a change of clothes, the other her laptop, sidearm, and a Zat, into the trunk. After getting into the vehicle, Carter quickly scanned the notes Daniel had given her, a list of motel addresses in Sunnydale. She entered the 6 locations into the car's onboard GPS system. Once all the data was input, she slowly drove out of the base and followed the GPS directions to the first motel. It wasn't until she arrived at the 5th one on the list, the Sunnydale Motor Lodge, that she finally struck pay dirt. Pulling into the parking lot, Carter parked in front of the main office. She stepped out of the car, making sure her weapon was concealed beneath her black leather jacket. The Zat was hidden in her right jacket pocket. As she approached the office, a strange feeling washed over her. She couldn't quite place it. She stopped for a moment, eyes scanning the half-empty parking lot as goosebumps erupted across her arms. Her hand slid into her pocket, tightening her grip on the Zat. After a moment, she continued toward the office. When she opened the door, a small chime rang out. A balding man emerged from a back room and eyed her with mild irritation. "What do you want?" he asked curtly. Carter reached into her handbag and pulled out Faith's ID. She held it up for the man to see. "Do you know if this young woman is staying here?" She caught the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "So she does. Stay here, I mean." The man nodded. "Haven't seen her for a while," he said. "She and my assistant had an arrangement before he died. After that, she moved out. Her things are still in the room." Carter nodded. Deciding not to waste time arguing, she handed him a $100 bill. "Room key," she said simply. The man grumbled. He muttered something about the room being a mess and said he'll have to throw out her things if she didn't come back soon. Still, he took the money and gave Carter the key. Without another word, she walked out of the office and headed toward the 2nd floor. As she made her way down the corridor, she heard the usual sounds of cheap motels, televisions blaring, children crying, and the occasional unmistakable noise of couples having sex. When she reached Faith's room, apartment 3, she paused at the door and played with the key in her hand. She was mentally preparing herself for whatever lay on the other side. After a moment of stillness, she slipped the key into the lock, turned it, and entered. She closed the door quietly behind her and flipped the light switch. The sight stunned her. Clothes were scattered all over the floor, the bed was unmade, and strange stains dotted the walls. Carter walked slowly through the room, absorbing the chaos. The closets were half empty. In the bathrooms, some clothes sat in the sink. She turned and looked over the room again in disbelief. Faith was staying here? Why? If she had friends in Sunnydale, why wasn't she with them? If they saw how she was living, why hadn't anyone offered her a place to stay? And if she had no friends, then why was she even in Sunnydale at all? Carter shook her head. She couldn't stay here very long. Too many questions needed answers, and to get them, she'd have to find the people who knew Faith in this town. She opened the door and stepped out, pausing once more to look back inside the room. She tried to picture her daughter staying here, alone. Why were you here, Ellie? Carter wondered as she quietly shut the door. She stared at the key in her hand as she made her way back toward the main office. I need to know how long you were living in that room, she thought. Tomorrow I'll meet with Tara. Maybe she knows what you were doing here? Maybe she knows why you ran to Colorado Springs and took on a false identity. And then we'll figure out who those people were. And I'll protect you. I wasn't there to protect you when you were a child, Carter thought, her eyes stinging with emotion. But I'm here now. Janet's right about you growing up as Faith. But to me, you'll always be Ellie. You have a grandfather who loves you, cousins who look up to you, and an uncle who, well, he'll probably judge me a bit at first. But he'll love you too. She sighed and opened the door to the main office again. Tomorrow, she hoped, there would be answers. To be continued.